Bandwidth for First Updates Now is supported by the Blue Alliance. Are you ready for kickoff? Make TBA Game Day your go-to destination for live first events, including kickoff at thebluealliance.com/game day.
People are interested.
But you know what? If you send me an email, you'll get a response, and it will be from me.
And I really don't have any desire to.
You haven't watched the trailer at all?
No.
A lot of people haven't heard of the couch division, so
It's a comfy division to be in, though.
it's super comfy. It's almost too comfy at times.
Your response to teams who see that as a new potential issue with districts?
Yeah, that's really a two-pronged question.
Let's see if there's any damage from that fall. There was. They snapped 330. Still on their back. 6 seconds to go.
4 was the highest rank. But then as votes continue to pour in, everything kind of changed around a little bit. So we forget to go back.
First Updates Now is brought to you by AndyMark. What projects and events will you be doing to get ready for kickoff? AndyMark has the components and supplies to get you going all year. Go to andymark.com and keep your team inspired.
Shut up and sit down.
Tonight on First Updates Now, Candidly speaking, our finale to the behind the scenes of the 2012 Einstein incident that changed the future of FRC. I'm Tyler, that's Karthik, and we're starting out right out of the gate by wrapping up the 2016 season with some of the biggest upsets in 2016 in First Robotics. Fun Nation, we want you to post below on what you thought was the biggest upset, but Karthik, what are you bringing to the plate?
I mean, there were a lot of upsets this year, and I think that's part of the nature of Stronghold, where there was a little bit of uncertainty. I think partially because so little defense was played in qualifying rounds, so the upset recipe was unleashed sometimes in eliminations. And the one that I think of, and it's a series of upsets, actually. It's the number 7 alliance from the Newton division. We're talking that was captained by Code Orange 3476. Sorry, it was captained by the Thunder Chickens.
Yeah, Thunder Chickens captain, yeah.
They picked Code Orange 3476. And on the back end, they got by far the best second-round pick that you could dream of, 4678, the Cybercabs, who are a team up here in Ontario, who were way too good to be a second-round pick. And so, and then they had Team 188 as the as the fourth robot, but the only time they ever played, they lost. So we'll forget about them for right now. And I guess going into championship, we did that pre-championship show with Colin, and we talked about the Newton division, how it was going to be ripe for upsets, because even though there were so many strong teams, the Serpentine becomes deadly when you have that many strong teams in a division, because there's actually could be an advantage to being the 7 or 8 alliance. And that's what happened here, because 4678 really turned this thing. So in series, they first took down the pairing of 118 and 1519. Then they took down 5172 and 67. And 5172, a lot of people might not know that number, but honestly, I think they were one of the top 5 robots in the world last year. This was the group of kids from up in Minnesota who just never missed a shot, it seemed. And then they played 254 and 1241 along with 708 and 1731 in division finals. And I have to say that 254 and 1241, I thought they were unbeatable. I thought they were going to win champs as soon as that alliance was formed.
Yeah, no doubt, right? Yeah.
And these guys, it was one thing is that you had 217, 34, 67, 34, 76, and 46, 78, who were 3 high-scoring robots. So they could match the firepower that 254 and 1241 brought. And 1241 had some terrible luck, and this robot that had been consistent all season long and basically had never failed, or close to never failed, had a major mechanical breakdown. And when that started going wrong, it all fell apart. And then, so those are the ingredients for the upset, where you have an alliance that is stronger than it should be because of circumstances in alliance selection, and another alliance who is super talented but just has some bad luck. You combine, bad luck and a powerful alliance, and there you go. That's an upset. And so that's what happened right there. And let's not forget 4678 and Company 217 and all those guys. They almost made another upset. They almost took down 148 and 1678 on Einstein. Yeah. They lost both matches by 5 points each. And if 188 doesn't get stuck on the moat, 188 was brought in as the 4th robot to play a match. They hadn't played a match in almost 24 hours at this point because they hadn't played all day Saturday. That alliance might have made another upset. So it was just they just knocked off so many teams, and it was a great show. Code Orange has been on Einstein 3 the last 4 years, and it really goes to show 4678 is one of the up-and-coming Canadian teams. And so, I mean, it was an upset in that it was a number 7 alliance taking all these guys down. But on the other hand, if you just look at it, this was a powerful alliance.
Yeah, just add on to that, because I was watching those matches as they went down, and yeah, I mean, I have to admit, they probably would have been my third-ranked alliance in that division, in the noon division. But you had, like you said, to me, if it wasn't for 1241, 254, my money was definitely on 67 and 5172. I have talked my ear off, or everybody's ear off, about 5172 and the power that robot has brought, and they're a lot like 1241. But man, 217, their strategy just was sound, and like you said, picking up the cyber caps. That was the team that they were able to actually pull down the was it the drawbridge or the Sallyport in autonomous, right?
They could do either in autonomous mode. So they had a working Class C autonomous mode, and so yeah, Class C would be killed by that alliance. And I think that was one of the things that people forgot last year, that in a lot of evenly balanced matches, the ability to do Class C was an extra 10 points, and so some of these matches were being decided by the thinnest of margins. So that was a big deal. And it's still, to my mind, I'm still confused as to why 4678 sat out while not broken on Einstein, but that's another story for another day.
Right. And and the only thing I'll say too, with the cyber calves is, you talked about, a lot of people don't remember the drawbridge just because they took it out during the postseason, right? So I don't know anybody remembers that because of that, with the whole postseason afterwards. All right, I'm going to go with one. We got a few to go through here. I'm going to go with the Hawaii semifinals this year at the Hawaii Regional. Specifically match 1-3, the number 1 alliance, captained by the powerhouses 359, Hawaiian kids with 368 Kikamana, playing against 3880 and 4253. So 359 had some issues. I reached out to Glenn Lee, who's the lead mentor, and if you don't know who Glenn is, one of the most fantastic people, not just in FIRST but in the world. Asked him what went on with that match, and he said that their transmission 14-tooth gears broke, and it was the aluminum gear that stripped, and the gear got twisted, and they couldn't pull the hex shaft out to swap. They literally had to pound it out, which took a really long time, and unfortunately too long to bring a backup robot on the field. So it's one of those things. They said Glenn mentioned that 330 had the same issue at some point too, and they had to go to steel for that. And they did that. They didn't have problems later on, but it broke in semifinal 1-2, which they actually won still, which was incredible at that time, moving in. And Glenn said they elected not to bring in a backup robot because they knew that if they were to advance, the backup robot at the time wasn't going to get them through finals. So they took the risk, if they were broken down in semifinal 2, to move on there. And the reason I picked this is that when you look at this on paper, yes, I know robots have issues and breakdowns, and we'll probably talk about a couple more that are like that. But on paper, there is no way I would have put any other money on any other alliance at the Hawaii Regional. And to see that dramatic change in the semifinals, I'm going to go with that one for my first one, at least.
All right, for my second upset, I will pick one that hits a little bit close to home, but it was the ending of 2056's epic 23 regional winning streak, where 1114 and 2056 faced off against 610 and 1241 in the finals of the Waterloo Regional. So I was there. I was obviously intimately involved with what was happening, and after alliance selection, we felt fairly comfortable because the best team in the regional was 148, and they seeded outside the top 8. And so 1114 picked 2056, and we knew that 148 was not going to be able to end up with 1241, and so we felt like we were in good shape there. But the wild card was Team 610, who struggled during qualifications. They were mainly a logo robot, and elimination rounds, first quarterfinal that they play, boom, their high goal shooter's working. And then we are all like, oh, okay, well, this changes everything. All of a sudden, like 1241, probably the second best scoring robot at that event compared to 148, but 2056 had the hang over them, but 610 was just on fire. Compound that with 1114, we were having what we at that time thought were just random power issues, where we died in the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals once each time. So we were having those issues. So finals match 1 comes up, 1114 dies. It's a 3-on-2. They win. Finals match number 2, 1241 dies. It's 3-on-2, and we win. So now it comes down to finals match 3, and it was just a super close back and forth match. This 1241 alliance, 1241 was just absolutely killing it. They were
lights out. Yeah,
they were the leaders of that alliance. Like 610 is, people always think of 610 because they've been consistently, amazing since 2013. However, that was the 1241 show. Let's not kid ourselves. And 1114 was not playing up to where we probably wanted to be, and 1241 was doing a great job. So it was very evenly matched. And then 2056 got stuck in high gear, and so when they went to go hang, everything was a little bit twitchy, and they couldn't get up there. And then boom, it was either a 5 or 10 point loss right there. And that hang would have made the difference. And yeah, I think the hang would have made a difference, and it would have been a tie, except 2056 would have come out on the positive side of these ridiculously stupid tiebreakers. But it was a great series, and if that streak was going to end, having it end in 3 matches against a fabulous alliance, it would have been cool to see all the robots running. But I mean, more power. That 1241 610 alliance absolutely deserved that victory. And again, to call that an upset, I mean, if you take 610 and 1241 and put them on an alliance at any other event across the world, they're the overwhelming favorite.
Yeah,
but this is the only place they would be an underdog. And so it's less of an upset and more of a monumental match, and just of the epicness of it.
Yeah, and I mean, we've talked about this match, the whole year. It is one of the best matches in first that we've seen, or best sequences of matches in first that we've seen. And we had Sean actually on right after Waterloo to talk to him about that. And when he talked about for 610 with their robot, they said that they just literally. Everything popped together at the right time. Like they just literally everything started coming together. That shot they had where they could climb and then put in that shot last second as well. That was a later strategy for them, and it was something that just really, it just all came together in absolutely amazing matches. And I won't drill you too much more on that moving forward, but because we've talked about it so much. But absolutely a fantastic upset match and fantastic matches in general.
Yeah, I mean, this could just be the show where we talk about everything that's gone
we
wrong
do a whole show
11,
just
14.
on that, right?
Yeah.
Another time.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna run it up with I would say would probably be my biggest pick, though. Man, it's hard to beat the 2056 11-14. But Michigan State Championships, the ACE match. Is that what you called ACE because they're doing so many? That's what I think you call it, right? ACE
I always call it the
one.
Sweet 16.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Sweet 16. But the number 1 versus number 16 alliance, match number 3, number 16 alliance brings down the number 1 alliance. So you had number 1 alliance, 33, 2767, 1684 versus 548, 5048, 217. Now, in hindsight, when you have 217 who are on Einstein this year, that seems to make a little bit more sense for things. But at the time on paper, looking at this match, octo finals, by the way, the chat's always good at correcting us, by the way. In the octo final, and even though it's on the screen for us now, we can see that. It's just really, really looking at this match, there's no way you would think that the 16 Alliance would do that. Not just because it's the 16th Alliance, but just 33 was just on fire going in the quals. They had such a good robot. Strike Force was doing really well. And just looking between the two matches, it was very close going back and forth. But Blue Alliance just kept it going and just kept cruising on into the quarterfinals.
No, I mean, just a lot of credit to 217 for being on the victorious side of 2 of those upsets. So that kind of speaks a lot to the robot in the season that they had last year.
Absolutely. And we had a lot to pick from on here. We can't cover them all. We know that. And was a lot of great upsets this year. That's why we want you to post below. If you're on YouTube, post it in our comments, or if you're on Twitch, post it there, and we'll try to get it to the post show for you. But let's take a look forward towards 2017. STEM's been a pretty ingrained in the culture of first, and also in North America. I can't speak for worldwide, but at least in the States here, I'm sure Karthik has been there too. But over the last few years, we've seen arts added with the new acronym STEAM. So in first, we haven't really heard too much about STEAM, but with the new game called First Steamworks, maybe I'm stretching a bit here. Could this gain traction in FRC? And Karthik, do you view this as the next evolution, or do we need to kind of cap this Steam train and just leave it at STEM?
I mean, I guess there's two different things to look at when I see this. One is the actual name, and I really think this is like a Romeo and Juliet sort of thing where what's in a name, you can call it whatever you want, as long as we're getting across the right thing. We're the whole idea of trying to solve the STEM gap and trying to get more people who, to me, it's about just having more people who can solve problems. And that's the issue we're trying to get, more people who can think critically. And I have no issue in involving the arts in that, because that's another type of thinking. And if you want to be able to solve problems, you have to have a lot of tools in your tool chest. So I do think that I'm okay with people still calling it STEM, because to me, the arts are integrated into science, technology, engineering, and math. I mean, as a mathematician, I can tell you that, I mean, there's a lot of writing about this, about how math is art and art is math. You can deconstruct a lot of art into, by looking at the golden ratio and music with harmonic means and all sorts of stuff like that. And when you look at math, the way I would judge any proof in real analysis is on the elegance of it. And that's an artistic concept. And being able to, people think of math as this very rigid, memorization type subject. And that's what arithmetic is. But as you get into higher level mathematics, especially at the university level, it becomes very esoteric and numbers aren't even involved anymore. So I think it's kind of ridiculous for people who think that art is incompatible with STEM. Whether it needs to be in the abbreviation, I just don't care. You could call it.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
We could come up with a new abbreviation.
We should.
It could be poop, and I wouldn't care. It just.
Hold on, wait. Meats.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yes.
Or steep, or Cleveland Steamer or something.
Oh.
It's just an abbreviation. So that's the thing. I'm a little. I saw that thread on Chief Delphi where this came up, and people were getting upset about art possibly being involved in this, and I was no, let's not be ridiculous here. But I do get
upset
point.
over one letter, right?
Yeah,
right?
I do get the counter argument where some people think that if you start involved, it might lead to it might open up people who aren't involved in science technology at all and getting grants, but I don't think we're at that point yet. And I'm okay. I don't care what the name is, but I do think it's really important that, especially that anyone who's really studying science, technology, and engineering really understands what's going on in the math in the world of arts. And arts can include language arts, it includes communication, which is super important. But realistically, we just need an intelligent society that can solve problems and that can think critically. And so, we've seen this now with the emergence of things like fake news. And if people can't actually think critically enough by reading and figuring out, what's real and what's BS, that's concerning. So,
the clickbait is so hard, man. I can't help it.
I mean, that's how I clicked on the ad for this show. I was just like, first updates now. What happened on Einstein?
Yes.
You won't believe what happened.
You won't believe what happened. Tune in on Monday. Yeah. So the whole STEAM versus STEM thing. I agree with you. It's what's in a letter, right? And for me, so my background's in marketing. So for me, the bringing that arts aspect, I mean, I do marketing and graphics and that sort of thing. And it's technology driven. I mean, we live in a technology driven world, and honestly, you could probably add another 15 acronyms to something like that. But yeah, when you look at something like that, I think STEAM fits nicely. If you want to talk about how an acronym sounds, STEAM sounds better than STEM, in my opinion, on paper. We're so used to hearing STEAM that I think we're just used to that. But I think STEAM works out a little bit better in STEM moving forward with that. And that's really all I have to say about that. So, all right, 2017 awards. So there was a blog post that came out earlier this month that was about judged awards in 2017. And Karthik, I wanted to bring this up to you because you and I are both MCs in FIRST, and so we might be able to take a little bit different approach to this. But there was a change to all regionals, and this will matter to you too since Ontario's going districts, that all judged awards will be given out on the last day of competition. So we saw this start the transition over last year, right? If you remember closing ceremonies, if you're at a traditional event, you saw that there's only a couple awards that were team awards given on Friday or Saturday, depending what day your events were at. But now it's only going to be the Woody Flowers finalists, and the Volunteer of the Year award will be given at the end of day one of regular competition. So Karthik, I got to ask you, what's your response to giving out awards all day on the last day of competition?
I'd say it's neutral. So, I mean, as long as we can make sure that Friday awards ceremony is super, super short, because In general, I don't like keeping teams after the match.
How do you do that when you're doing all the awards on the last day?
Okay, so, well,
send two reps.
There's a simpler solution than that. Why don't we hand out some awards in between matches? We do it at the championship. All sorts of other competitions do this. Some districts even do it. There's no reason for us to wait until the finals are over and then hold another hour to hour and a half ceremony. I think that's really insulting to the teams, especially the ones who were knocked out at noon and are now sitting around for 5-6 hours. So I don't have an issue with handing out all the events awards on one day or the other, but I really do think that we should start handing out some awards in between elimination matches. When we have all these 6-minute field timeouts, that's a great time to hand out 2 awards. And as for only 2 people coming down to the field, I'd be okay with that for all the non-medal awards. Any award where you're putting someone around someone's neck, I think they should have that opportunity to get it. But everything else, I think having 2 people go down there to get it instead of this long, massive handshake line, that would be good too. So no real issue with all the awards being handed out on the same day. I think that makes life a lot easier for our judges. And I think it's better for anyone who's on a team because then your team's being judged on a larger scope of available information. But yeah, I would just love to see awards spliced in with matches.
Okay, yeah, I like that a lot, and I don't know about you from the whole team dancing perspective. It's good to have a couple of those, but it does get a little bit long sometimes when you have all these breaks and it's just the DJ playing dance stuff. It's good for a few times, and maybe I'm just getting old grandpa and stuff, but after a while, there's other things we can fill that dead air with, and awards I think are a fantastic way to do something like that. I really like that idea a lot. And First hasn't released how they're going to do that necessarily, so that's still a possibility.
It could be the plan for sure. And I guess the other thing to think about is I always just feel sad when we hand out an award and the team isn't there to pick it up because they've gone home already. And like,
you have that? I haven't had that at a regional for probably 8 years.
It happens from time to time. I see it at once or twice per season, and usually it's the Rookie Inspiration Award. Because the Rookie Inspiration Award often goes to a team who's not expecting it in any way whatsoever. And a lot of people, were like, oh, well, that team, if they can't stick around, they don't deserve an award. That's not racially professional. It's like, yeah, I get it. Teams should stick around. You shouldn't just leave when you get knocked out. But man, it's long. We know how long these events are. It's a long day. Yeah. So I'm not going to fault the team for leaving early, but I think that especially when I don't think we do enough to speed things up. So I just think, especially if you're a team who doesn't make the elimination rounds and you're done at noon, it's really hard to justify sitting around for another 5-6 hours, especially since there's so many kids on these teams who aren't hardcore robot people. Like we see that. So if you just came there to dance, I don't know.
So one last thing before we move on. So this is going to be kind of an anecdote thing, but so as an MC, I really like the whole bring down 2 people because my hands are a lot less sore as they go through. I don't know about you, man, but the regionals that I do, man, those kids try to slap my hand as hard as they possibly can. And by the time I'm done, my hand is just throbbing. So yeah, students, can you please lay off on that a little bit? I'd appreciate it.
Yeah. And also if you could wash your hands.
Good hygiene, right?
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. So before we get into our main story tonight, let's go ahead and take a break and thank our continuing sponsors of First Updates Now, AnyMark. Kickoff's coming up next month, and we all know how compressed the build season is, and that's why your team needs to be ready to handle the pressure. New to AnyMark in the 2017 season is the 1.1 pump. This air compressor has a maximum flow of 1.1 cubic feet per minute, and is optimized for your FRC robot. The 1.1 pump compressor replaces the previous VI air compressor. It can fill 5 Clippard 574 milliliter tanks about 30% faster than the VI air compressor, keeping your robot in the game even more. And don't forget to stock up on those sweet black Clippard air tanks with push connect fittings, lighter than aluminum but still durable. These tanks eliminate the need to have metal fittings screwed into the tank and emits the unnecessary over tightening of fitting air into a tank. So go head on over to anymark.com. Don't forget kickoff's coming up soon. Get your parts, stock up, and don't forget to check out their deal of the day. It's transitioned from deal of the week to deal of the day. And a huge thank you to AnyMark for helping make First Updates Now content happen. And AnyMark would like to wish all teams a successful 2017 season. So before we get into our main story tonight, we did mention that we have a special guest coming on the show, and we do want to bring that person on here. So let's go ahead and do that. Give me just a moment.
That's what we're going to do.
All right. Well, let's start this off the top then.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do it. Our main story tonight continues with the 2012 season Rebound Rumble, and will take us into one of the most controversial events in FIRST history. When we left off on our last episode, the winners of the Archimedes Alliance 11-14, 20-56, and 43-34 just defeated the number one alliance of 28-26, 67, and 41-43. If you didn't get a chance to see part one, by the way, leading up to Einstein, make sure you click the link and check out this incredible discussion. And to bring this on to help us out here, we got Libby Kamen coming on the show. Yeah, Libby, no intro music for you. I'm sorry, but what brings you on the show today?
Just happy to help host and facilitate discussion. I was in the front row for a lot of it, but not, I mean, I was half on a team, visiting with a team. But I'm really glad to see that there are also some other folks from some of the other teams in chat too. So that'll be some nice perspective to bring in. So thanks for having me on today. I had a lot of fun last time I was on the show.
Yeah, we're glad to have you on. And before we get started, by the way, we do want to acknowledge that as we get into discussion, there are some sensitive topics we talk about, and that's why we bring to the forefront here on Candidly Speaking. And we also know that one bad apple does not mean a whole team is bad. So we're here to tell the story of what happened, at least in the best of our light and our opinions for things. And we also did some extra research with some other people who are beyond the scenes that will bring to light. But we really just want to bring the story together to provide to you what happened in 2012. So Karthik and Libby, let's get into it. Start us, Karthik, if you don't mind, kind of walking us through the 2012 story from your point of view. What's going on in the forefront and behind the scenes with your team on Einstein?
So, I guess we should go over the basics here for what everyone knows, and then we'll kind of fill in the blanks because I don't want people know the story behind the scenes. Number one, the Einstein incident of 2012, people just don't talk about it in general. Like, it's really been because it's uncomfortable. It brings up a side of FIRST that people we don't like to recognize, and we kind of want to forget that it happened. So the basics are, and there's a whole Einstein report, and I urge you to read it, but there was an admitted intentional malicious attack to shut down robots on Einstein that was successful. The perpetrator only admitted to one incident. However, there were multiple matches where the exact same symptoms were exhibited. The person said he did this because he wanted to prove to FIRST that there was a weakness in the router firmware. And so he was just he was doing this to demonstrate, because he thought other people were doing it to his team. So he wanted to show, hey, FIRST, look, because he said he felt ignored by FIRST because he apparently tried to explain this. So, so that's what happened. There was an intentional hack. The hack was very simple. All you had to do was take a 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi device, open it up, and you would see the Wi-Fi networks for each of the robots on the field in the match. And all you had to do was click on 1114, and 1114 would then about 10 seconds later drop out. And if you tried to connect to 1114 again, they would come back up. And so that's really important to remember, and I'll get into that in a bit. But at the time, and Libby was down there on the field, and so she was right there. From the 1114 perspective, we just gotten into the freaking Hall of Fame. We just won the Chairman's Award, so things we're in a good mood. And we played this first match, and us in 2056 just keep dying. And we're like, what is going on? It just didn't make any sense to us. And we had died earlier in the event, and 4334 was dying as well, on Einstein. But nothing made sense. There was a lot of confusion and a lot of chaos. And so we came off the field. We're like, what just happened there? And then the FTAs went back and forth for a while, and there was a lot of confusion, and they decided to replay that match. So we're like, okay, we're replaying the match. This will be all good. And then they play the match again, and the same stuff happens. And it doesn't make sense. And I don't really want to go into the gory details of match by match, but basically we never had any point where all three of our robots were really moving. Or if there was, it was brief. Like, we were just constantly, one would die. And even in the midst of that, robots constantly dying, we actually kept it respectably close. Like, we only lost the second match by 22 points. But it was, and there was, there were just teams dying everywhere, and it just didn't make any sense. And we knew something was up. But let me remind everyone here: no one on our alliance was thinking that we were being hacked at that point.
No,
that
how would you know that, right?
Yeah. No, we just thought it was. We thought the control system sucked, which people.
Which isn't untrue.
Well, it just.
There were some issues with it, yeah.
I mean, there's always been glitches, and we just thought it was like a glitch at a terrible time, and so that wasn't going through our heads. But like, people knew what was going on, and like, Libby, you were right down there, and like, I mean, because your uncle got involved, and maybe you want to speak to that as to what he said down there.
Yeah,
which is one of the behind the scenes things that people just don't know about.
Yeah. I mean, so from my perspective, I was kind of, trying to sit as peacefully as I could where I was. But it really was, kind of this panic because, again, at the time, like nobody knew what was happening, just that something was wrong and not your usual glitch. Like there's kind of this like, it's Einstein. This is our biggest show. Why are the robots dying? What is happening? And there was this, kind of like, we need to figure out what's happening. We need to make it right. But at the same time, you need to kind of, keep the show running. And it was just this, really crazy balance of a lot of different things and obviously very tense and very, just a lot of stuff going on. But it was very much, like all of a sudden Dean's behind the scorer's table trying to figure out what's going on, which was, on top of several other things happening at the same time on stage was like, no, we need you to stay, in your seat where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, I think you have to be kissing like a lot of babies or something like that. You have all those corporate people coming around, right?
So the way that Einstein worked at that point was that there was kind of the stage next door, and on that stage were Dean and Woody and was not Don Bosey at the time, but it was, the president of First, whoever that person is. It's that kind of row of three that you see during a lot of the ceremonies. And it was, we need you to stay here. We need you to stay. You have to be like in your spot. And he was like, no, something is wrong. I need to help address this. And it wasn't really that he would have necessarily, any information, because he's just not like, Dean is an FTA, but that, right. Hey, this is, for lack of better terms, this is my show and I need it to look good. And it was something that definitely, a lot of tension going on because nobody knew what was going on. And obviously anytime there's an issue with connections or stuff, that the first staff behind there is really trying to make it work for the teams. But this is the most colossal time to possibly fail. And it was just a little bit, wild.
Well, I remember Liz Smith was one of the FTAs down there, and she was just working and working and working. And I mean, she was feeling the pain too, because I think she was almost as hurt by this as anyone else, because I think she kind of felt it was like her job to keep the robots running, and she couldn't. And but I guess there was a time in FRC, and it's gotten a lot better now, where the tendency was, a robot's dead, blame the teams. And I mean, why wouldn't there be that tendency? Because almost 99% of the time it was the team's fault. We know it's hard for teams to keep robots connected and such. But on this Einstein, I remember there was significant opinion voiced by some people at the highest level, including Dean, that, hey, this can't be the robots. And it was assured, it's like, no, this is the robots. This is on them. And then let's just move on. And with all the robots, it wasn't just our alliance that was dying. There was lots of things going on.
Yeah,
some of them
I think the 987 Alliance had connection issues too. The 233, 207, 987 Alliance.
They did. And 118 had issues too, which ended up being an uninitialized gyro, which was, separate from all this. Mm-hmm. But I mean, that's where some of the legend starts on this, is that the purpose, I mean, we'll get into that because it's sensitive to talk about. But yeah, like coming off the field, I'll just never forget, because we just didn't know what happened, and we felt it wasn't us. And once we realized they weren't going to replay that second match, and we were out, like we didn't know what to do. And I mean, like some people joke that the best thing that possibly could have happened in this scenario was that 11-14 had won chairman's earlier, because we were in a really good mood, and you just got into the Hall of Fame. You're not going to create us, you're not going to start shouting at people or have a sit-in, which in hindsight, maybe we could have done.
Sitting on the
It
field
was
until the match
definitely
goes.
proposed. Yeah, like, hey,
Oh my goodness.
can we just not go anywhere until this issue is resolved? Because there were so many we're gonna replay, and then there's these long pauses, and there was definitely kind of a we're just gonna stay here. We're not gonna do anything until we go on.
The joke was that 11-14 is going to get into the Hall of Fame at 4:00 and be kicked out at 5:15. So it was, and I mean, I was just really impressed with how the teams handled the situation down there. Not just our alliance, but the other alliances. There's two things I won't ever forget. One was our operator Jessa Pruniak coming to me afterwards and looking at me and saying, "I'm sorry, Karthik." And I'm like, "What are you sorry for?" She's like, "We didn't win. We didn't move. That's on me for being a driver." And for her to have to feel that way for a good 2 months until we found out what that. See, now I'm getting upset. What that freaking little hacker, Gamergate moron did, that's just not fair, and that's it's cruel and it's not fair.
And even for 2 months, you talk about. I mean, we are all in first at some point. I don't know about you guys, but I was a driver and I had a way less situation. I still remember that years afterwards. So, I mean, that's something you take with you for a really long time.
Yeah. And the reason I say 2 months, Tyler, is that 2 months later, she found out it was a hacker and it was not her fault. But that's why I say 2 months. Oh yeah, no, that would have lived with her forever. And then in the aftermath, if I had to listen to another, self-proclaimed expert, "Oh, I've been an LRI for so many years and I know it was 11-14's faulty wiring," go just bite me. And I guess there was, so let me talk more about the positive. Members of the pink team coming up to us and saying, "Hey, do you want our medals? Because we don't feel like we deserve them because this wasn't a fair matchup." And that was heartbreaking too, because it's completely unfair to have your victory devalued. It's not, the victims aren't just the team who loses, but the team who wins in a matchup that's unfair to them. And I feel for 16, 25, and 180, because I don't think it's fair when anyone says, "Oh, well, that championship doesn't count," or "that championship have an asterisk," because I mean, they didn't cause this. This wasn't their doing. So there was only one team that was involved, and it really was one person from that one team. And so I imagine being on that alliance of 16, 25, and 180, and you win championship, and now you have to hear this show, and there's probably people in the chat are like, "Oh, they deserve." That's not fair. They deserve their championship. We all deserved a shot at the championship, but yeah. So, but on the negative side, it just kind of felt that afterwards that we were the ones being jumped on. It's like, "Oh, look, there's 11-14 and 2056 whining about stuff," and there was the Chief Delphi when we found out it was a hacking, people were like, "Oh, I just want to give that hacker a hug." It's like, you're an idiot.
Yeah, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to empathize with somebody who just regardless of where it is, but on Einstein that just do something like that.
But unfortunately, there was a lot of victim blaming that went on.
Sure.
And and we see that in our society in general, the way that we, especially because let's be honest, 11-14 and 2056 are not two of the most loved teams in first. There's a lot of people who have a little bit of dislike, and I know there were people afterwards who kind of enjoyed what happened because it was like, "Oh, well, it's, sucks to be you," and it was just like, sure, if that's the way you want to be. But
so, I'm sorry. Okay, so people, you're saying enjoyed that this whole thing went down?
There were some people, absolutely, because I've seen chat transcripts and I've seen comments, and where it was just like they thought it was like a little bit of Schadenfreude. Here's the two teams who win all the time, and whatever. Let me clear this up. This is a small minority, but
yes, I'm sure, right?
And this is one of those things that this whole incident brought to the forefront for me, that the negativity that you get, even if the negativity comes from 1% of the populace or 1/10 of the percent of the populace, outweighs the positivity. And it's doing it right now for me as I think about it, because there were so many people who were like, "Man, this is unfair. I can't believe this happened to you," but that's not what you remember.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing when we talk about how this one perpetrator, that one person represents such a small slice of first. But yeah, so all the robots, basically the day after the championship, John Dudas sent out an email to all FRC teams and basically said, hey, we're going to do an investigation. We know something wasn't right there. And then they did an investigation, and it was discovered that there was a firmware update in week 4. And when that firmware update was done, I think it was all Rev A or Rev B routers, robot routers were affected. And all of a sudden, this exploit was available where you could, and disconnect robots. So they brought all the Einstein robots to first headquarters, and with two reps from each team, and they did testing. And they basically knew kind of what happened before the robots got there, because they discovered what the exploit was, and then they were able to duplicate it.
So can we back up for just a second? Can you talk about the process of when they sent out the invites, what was it, an email? Did they call you, or what was the process of getting you to come out to Manchester?
A combination of emails and phone calls. And I have to say, this is when Frank Merrick really just proved that he's the man, because the way he handled the Einstein situation, and he was my direct contact with First as this was going on. And Frank was not the director of FRC.
No, he was the assistant director, I think, right?
Yeah. Oh. And I had a conversation with Frank, and he just wanted to get things right. And so, they did all expenses paid to get 2 people from each team there. They shipped our robots. I think most teams didn't even. Our robots didn't even come home. They were diverted straight to Manchester from championship. And I remember that weekend when the testing was going on, I didn't go for 11-14. Kyle Willick, our drive coach, and Jason Roper, our programmer, went because we wanted to have our best control system minds there to help figure stuff out. And then Tyler Holtzman, who was there with 2056, had been texting me periodically. And then he's like, hey, can I phone you? And we're not big phone call people, we're just BBM. And so I was like, oh, okay. So he's figured something out. And we knew something weird was happening because a couple weeks before the testing, they asked us to send us the MAC addresses of any computers that were near the field during Einstein. And I'm like, that's a weird thing to ask for. Why do you want the MAC address of our scouting laptop? But, we did that or whatever. But it was because they figured out that that there were incursions. They thought that maybe it could have been accidental incursions is what they were hoping for. And that if your laptop was there and it was trying to connect to the robot, something could have happened. Yeah. But Ty called me and he goes, hey, so first explain this to us. And I go, okay, what is it? And I was not expecting hacking. He goes, it was an intentional, targeted, malicious act. And I will never forget those words. Intentional, targeted, malicious attack. And it was just like, whoa. And rumors had gone around about hacking because some of the mentors on 987, they said they saw someone by a field furiously tapping into a phone.
Yeah.
They saw 11-14 and 2056 on
Side note, I remember at IRI, Copioli had me actually do that in the beginning of IRI, was to take a tablet and start tapping on it. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly.
Not to bring in humor to the sad subject, but yeah.
But that's exactly what it was. And it was just like, whoa. And so we didn't know who did it right away. And, First wanted to keep that quiet John Dudas flat out told me, he said, the reason we're not identifying the person or the team is we First was worried about the individual suing First. If First released the
see, I thought it would have been a safety issue for that person. But
no.
I guess that makes sense too. But
They
at least
worried.
from First side, it makes sense to cover themselves. In my opinion.
And then I think everyone was okay with that, except once the word got out that it was a member of a team on Einstein. And once that rumor went out, which was true, then finger pointing started. And then rumors went out that were very incorrect. But the worst thing would be is if someone all of a sudden just thinks, hey, someone on 118 did it. That wouldn't be fair. And so it eventually got out. It was a team member from Team 548, and it was not reflective of their team at all, because we met their team at GTR East and everyone was awesome. Even the guy who did it was pretty awesome, and that was a freaking kick in the pants. That, we chatted with him at length, and I thought he was a pretty cool guy. He'd been involved in FRC for a long, long time. But we were told by Frank that this person had been banned from all First events going forward, and that was that. And so Then I guess what kind of set us off was when they announced that they were going to let all teams who were on Einstein into the championship next year free of charge, which was a nice gesture, except it seemed a little weird that 548 was a recipient of that gesture.
So let's talk about that a little bit.
Give me 1 second, Tyler.
Yeah,
1 second.
go ahead. All right.
Eventually, 548 did not compete at championships that year, and I don't officially know why. Off the record, I've been told that they eventually were quietly told that they weren't allowed to come. But I've never ever heard that from a person from first staff. I've only heard it from people hearsay, so I don't want to claim that I know that, because I think there was a lot of people claiming stuff to know stuff about Einstein. I'd like to kill some of that. But it was just weird. And really, I don't want to make the issue about an individual or a person or a team, because that's really not what this is about. I think I'd rather just try to talk about the impacts it had on First and the teams involved, as opposed to, blaming one person, even though, the person's I won't swear, but the person is
not a nice person.
Argo.
Yeah, there we go. Libby, if I can ask you, sure. with the Einstein incident, as we start transitioning forward as an outsider's perspective, as we're all hearing about what happened, and we're starting to get some tidbits and information and moving through, what was kind of your thoughts in regards to, like, as more got exposed and we started to understand more? Can you kind of take us through your thoughts of how overall it was handled, how the consequences were for that individual, for that team, or anything like that? Were things handled correctly by First?
So I don't know if I'm necessarily the, end all be all of his First doing things correctly, but there's a couple of things that, as you're going to, Karthik, I didn't want to stop you. I kind of thought about a couple of things. So one, at championship, things were obviously melting down all over the place, but that championship, and of course, to the point that nobody that was competing at that championship should consider that win was not valid, all sorts of stuff. There is an asterisk on the event, but not on the teams, because that is the day that First had to really change gears, and FRC had to handle things with their teams differently, because there was this intense attitude in a lot of places where you lost comms, that's your fault, too bad, have fun. Like you have 4 more matches, so who cares? And it certainly, there's bad apples, it still happens, but from that moment, FRC kind of made this huge shift, and so much of it is Frank's. And I just want to echo what Karthik was saying, is that Frank is the man.
Frank is the man, yes.
That is where the team and the customer service brain of FRC taking care of its teams when things weren't right really came into play. Is that Frank kind of took that on with this and tried his damnedest and there's all sorts of stuff. But so there was one thought there, but I think with remembering that it's one person, I do tend to agree with Karthik that getting the invitation was weird. I think the way things were handled made rumors a little bit worse, because it was like there were all of these back channels of people who've been doing First forever and ever and ever, who were like, oh, I heard this happened, I heard this happened, I heard it was this team, I heard it was that person. Everyone's got their own story. Like they claim that they know everything because they're best friends with so and so, and it's so much of a different different system, and you don't expect how to handle that. Nobody would, I think in all of the plans and stuff that FRC puts forward of like, what are we going to do next season? What are we going to do with customer service? No one was like, what do we do if somebody hacks Einstein? Like, that's just not something that they were ready to handle. But I think for a lot of people, it was a good, they tried really hard to make it right. There are there's people on both sides where there was this really harsh attitude of like, there's no need for an investigation, just blame the teams, blame their wiring, blame all of these different things. But there were, at the same time, there were so many people who were so good about like, something went wrong and we have to make it right. And I don't know if every single aspect was managed correctly. I think first tried, and it was a really big step in being communicative to teams, but there's, always room for improvement. I don't know. I'm like 50-50. It was that summer, I was a marketing intern. I was not working with FRC. I was working mostly with LEGO League programs, but it was definitely a hard set of conversations to have on the marketing team of how do we talk about this I kind of got to listen. I was the intern. I didn't have a lot of input, but it was how do we put this forward? And knowing that I was an FRC alumni and a mentor, they tried to kind of just, hey, is this a really dumb thing to say to teams? And sometimes the answer was yes. And it was a little bit, no one knows how to be ready for that. No one is like, what happens if someone hacks our world championship finals?
Yeah,
but
you don't have the flow chart for that, right?
No, there's no flow chart. And I think
well, there probably is now.
Yeah, I guess. But it was, I think, the bringing everybody in to investigate. There was also this weird push of like, we need to replay it. And like, that would have made the win that, again, shouldn't be discounted because of the circumstances. Like, it would have been, it would have made things fuzzy, but
yeah,
it was.
And
go ahead.
Well, I guess tying into that, just a couple things. One, there are a lot of stories that we're not going to talk about today because I only want to talk about things that we know for certain. And I don't want to contribute to all those, like what Libby said, these back channels and these rumors that went out there. But there's a whole depth of other stuff that, of hearsay that makes this situation get a lot weirder and more uncomfortable. But in terms of the replay, that was definitely something people talked about, that this should be replayed. And we, 11-14, that was something we weren't interested in because, number one, I don't think that would have been fair to 16-25 and 180. However, there also was talk about, instead of having 3 world champions that year, about possibly having 9 or 12 world champions that year. And, I wouldn't have been opposed to that. I think that might have been a nice gesture. I mean, but as long as it was done in a way.
I know that your names aren't on there, but there is First did somewhat do that effect of inviting all those teams back and paying for championships for them as well too. I know it's not quite what you're looking for, but I mean there was something to that regard.
I mean, at the end of the day, 11-14 only has 1 world championship. We don't have 2, and but I mean, first of all, let's not assume that our alliance was going to win the world championship. Let's
That's a fair point.
Not assume that. I mean,
it did essentially win IRI though.
Yes. I'm a competitor. And do I believe we would have won? I think we would have given it a pretty good shot. I think the A team was we were a special group, but I would have loved to have had that chance, and never got it, and that was a weird sort of thing. But I mean, like, we don't want to be the show that just runs for hours and hours here. So, but there are some funny things I wanted to bring up that happened on Einstein.
Can I ask you a quick question real quick, since we're kind of transitioning to that? So one of the most memorable things I remember on Einstein was at the beginning of Einstein when you were introduced, or not you, but your alliance was introduced, and out comes the Canadian flag running into the middle of the field. It's funny because I saw some people like, oh, why are they showing Canadians flag or Canada's flag? I'm like, that was one of the coolest freaking things I've ever seen. You could feel the spirit in the air, just right, the Canadian spirit of the North coming to St. Louis.
It was the only time where there's ever been 3 Canadian teams on one alliance at championship.
Mm-hmm.
And first time it happens, they win their division and go to Einstein. It was a pretty cool thing, especially as someone who's been involved with the history of First in Canada since the beginning, being on the first ever Canadian team. And that was just it was a cool moment. So I mean, I love that alliance. Like, a lot of us still in our, Twitter signatures or whatever, will have hashtag A-Team forever because, we 5 years later, and the closeness between the 3 teams is, undeniable. I was in Amsterdam this summer, and I ran into some members of 4334 who were on the team at that time. And, yeah. Yep.
Just like randomly? This wasn't planned.
Yeah, we were. I was going on a boat cruise. They were going on a boat cruise, and we just ran into each other. And then, we talked about it. We took pictures. We hugged. It was like, it was neat. There's a serious bond there. Like I saw a post on Facebook from one of the drivers from 4334, Mac, and it's like Mac was even mentioned about how he still hasn't gotten over this. And I was like, yeah, man, like that. I feel you, brother, and I feel you for everyone, that went through that. And I don't want to turn this into a whining sob story or whatever. So, couple things. One, having been behind the scenes at many regionals, and when I see teams handle refereeing calls so poorly, it blows my mind, because the teams at Einstein handled this so professionally with so much class. There was no chewing out referees. There was no just the complaining. There were no parents getting involved. It was just people were upset, people were frustrated. But yeah, so the funny stuff. I guess it wasn't funny at the time. But while Einstein was happening, people forget there was a tornado.
I couldn't remember if that was 2012 or not.
There was an actual tornado.
Yes.
So we are on stage. Because 11-14, remember, we just got into the Hall of Fame. So, most of us are up on stage. And then we see warnings going, tornado, blah, blah, blah. And so a bunch of the Einstein teams who were in that Einstein pit area, someone got an evacuation order there. And Solution Junkin from 118, who's just the master of getting people organized, he's like, everyone to the bathroom. It's the only safe spot. And so I get wind of this, and I'm still down on the ground, but 11-14's on the stage. And I'm like, well, if we're evacuating to the bathroom, I'm not leaving our whole team here on the stage. So I run over there and I go, Simbots, down. And they just started hopping off the stage as the show is going on. And I will never forget this moment, because I think it says everything about Einstein 2012. Someone from First yells at me and goes, Karthik, you're ruining the show. And it was like, yeah, if there's an evacuation order, we're
kid safety comes first, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I remember then, as this was going on, there was people in the bathroom, but that corner of the dome, there's doors to the outside there. And a security guard had opened the doors in the middle of the tornado to go out for a smoke. And there's a freaking tornado going on and craziness. And this guy is having a cigarette. And I just thought to myself, man, kids, never start smoking. Never do it. Because if your addiction is that effed that you want to go stand in a tornado, that's some powerful stuff there, man.
He looks so cool.
Oh, that is some powerful, powerful stuff there. And I feel for anyone who is addicted, because that's a true addiction, man. That is true. I feel for you. And that is crazy. The other one is, and most people don't know this story, but 2 drunk dudes broke into Einstein.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Oh my God.
So they were at
the day couldn't get any worse.
They were at the St. Louis Cardinals game, and game was over, or probably rained out because of a tornado. And they came into the dome, and they ran right by the field. And then they started chanting 11-14 because they saw 11-14 on the team numbers. So they were just so people thought that these were members of our team, which I'm like, never would there be. No. But it was just these drunken fools started running around, and they tried to get to it was crazy. And so then Coco Ed and Tom Nader have to corral these guys. Security eventually gets them off the field, but then they went to the pit and just started overturning tables and stuff. Also, the pit, which was partially flooded at this point from the tornado.
Right.
So in the midst of all the chaos and awfulness of Einstein, there was a little bit of comic relief. And I mean, some of the cool stuff is there were some teams that we're really good friends with down there. And so at least we had these, we can share in this mess with them, 987 and 233 and 118. We just, and 25, hearing from Sean McNulty afterwards, who I've, played with since basically we were, teenagers, and we've gone through First together. So, it was a crazy, crazy day. For a couple months, and Libby knows this, I wanted to quit First. I wanted nothing to do with this program. I was because especially some of the conversations that I had with John Dudas were not the best, but there were a lot of people who restored faith for me. I mean, I think Frank Merrick was just amazing. I mean, when he called me to talk to me in person about this, he was almost on the verge of tears. And that was a man who cared about these teams. And I thought that was a big deal. And then it was really cool at IRI, the first time I saw Meredith Novak after the whole thing. And Meredith was just like, I'm so sorry. I can't believe, and I go, Meredith, you guys won the champion. Like, like it was just that level of respect right there was important. And
So I want to, if you don't mind, because I want to get Libby on a couple things before we take off here, and then we can kind of wrap up, and I kind of have a final thing to go through. Libby, you kind of, when we mentioned the drunk people and stuff, you kind of seem to light up a little bit there. Is there anything that you can kind of add, that maybe a little bit of comic relief that went on in Einstein this year that you can contribute towards?
I don't know if this is necessarily funny. Karthik's heard the story a couple times, but related to the tornado fiasco. So the way that the setup for the stage used to be before they moved everything up into, like, all the VIPs are upstairs and everything's on the floor, and there's now a bigger stage down by Einstein. And when that didn't exist, it was just, the one field and like a podium, and that up on that raised stage where the Hall of Fame team was sitting, and all of the VIPs. So my family, notably my grandmother, first staff, all sorts of stuff, were sitting in just folding chairs up front. And at the time, one of, some of the DECA staff that was down there, everybody kind of has their job of, like, my grandma, especially being like the queen that she is, has her own handler who's like, I make sure Nana gets where she needs to go. I'm like, this is important.
I got somebody out of this too once you're done.
So we're sitting around and watching matches, and I specifically remember my dad having to, like, calm me down because I was a little bit, like, angry about the Einstein situation, and my dad was like, you're not on a team, you're sitting in the front row, like, you need to chill out. But then the tornado warnings start going, and where we were sitting was under, just like on the stage, was under all the rigging. So we're seeing tornado, and so all the lights for Einstein are basically above our heads, pointed to the field. Tornado, tornado, tornado. And we're seeing the lights just start to go like this. And, like, you could hear it through the dome. We're seeing everything above us start to go like this. And slowly, so as not to freak out the people who helped support first, some of the venue staff and the show staff are, like, leaning over. I'm like, okay, like, this is the evacuation. This is where you need to go. But the way that my uncle's chief of staff at the time transmitted the plan to me was, okay, Libby, we're going to have to get out of here in a second. I just need you to know, if stuff goes down, I won't swear, if stuff goes down, I'm picking your grandmother up and I'm running. Because not like this calm evacuation, because at one point, and I just had to look at somebody, and it was somebody that, like, I work with, or, volunteered with all the time. They kind of asked, like, would you be willing, like, the thing on the plane, like, would you be willing to assist and, like, get people out of their seats? And I'm looking like, you want me to stand under here for how much longer than everybody else? Like, no way. He just looks and he goes, don't worry, I got your grandmother. I'm just gonna put her over my shoulder and we're just gonna run. So Nana was safe. But I just getting asked, like, will you help people get out of their seats in an orderly fashion? I was like, so you're gonna let the rigging fall on me? I know where I stand now. Thank you very much. Like, it was absolutely just, it couldn't get more ridiculous that day.
And just to clarify one thing for the chat, to understand, the Edward R. Jones Dome is a known evacuation site for the city of St. Louis, so it's actually a safe place to be. So, like, everyone who's sitting in the stands, it was in the safest place they could be in the city, basically. It was those of us down on the field that were not necessary, and the VIPs who weren't in the safest place, because we were underneath the rigging, which isn't actually secure. But, like, so that's why First didn't announce anything with the tornado in the dome. And well, I mean, there's
There we go. Yeah, so there were a couple of questions in the chat about, like, why didn't staff know what to do, this and this and that. In those seats is actually where you're supposed to go if you have nowhere else to go during a tornado. Like,
they
if
didn't
you
want you on the
St.
outside because
Louis,
all the windows were there.
Yeah, like, if you were from St. Louis and you, like, needed a shelter, in those seats where the teams were sitting was the shelter. It's just that the floor and anything like under where the roof might fall, because there's the multiple levels. So that first level was very safe for people, and that's why they said, please don't leave your seats. Stay in a good place.
And it wasn't even the roof that's really the issue, but it was the rigging that's all temporary stuff. So it's not actual structure. But the tornado. I mean, the tornado would be enough of a story. The drunk guys would be enough of a story. When you add in, the hacking and it was, we could write a book about that day.
Maybe we should write a book.
Yes,
I would contribute. That'd be a good book.
Well, I mean, if we could get some real journalists behind it who could do some investigation and sort out some of the truth from fiction, so we would have it done on a reputable site, I'm not even going to start about fake news, but if something was done like that, it'd be cool, because there's more stories out there. I've heard many of them, and some are true and some aren't, but like when you put it all together, and really, I don't want to turn this into a lynch mob, so I'm going to avoid doing some of that, but there's an interesting path going all the way back to week 4 of the regional season towards Einstein, and there's some stories there. But yeah, think of the funny things. Think of the tornado. Yeah, the tornado is the funny thing, which is like
that's what just blows my mind is, hey, let's talk about funny stuff like tornadoes and natural disasters.
And it was like an inch hail for that. I remember I had my coach bus driver calling me frantically. Well, first off, I'm already starting to get a little diet soda'd up as I'm in the VIP lounge after my team lost on Archimedes, and just calling me like, hey, I don't think I can stay anymore. My windows are starting to crack. I literally just got a crack in my window. Like, I'm like, dude, just go somewhere. And and then with the drunk people moving around, 2012 was really, Mr. Twild's wild ride of first for the most part. I do want to wrap up with the question, and this is something I didn't ask you guys at all, so I don't know if you know or not, and I don't really want to speculate either on this, but First did make a big transition, right? They transitioned to a new director, and transitioned to a new president of First, so a new director in FRC, new president in that. Is there anything you guys can talk about and like kind of what the process was behind that or anything? Because I'm sure it's an easy correlation to put to the Einstein incident and something like that happening, but there's got to be a little bit more to that, I would think.
I don't think I'm qualified to speak on that. I think this falls into the category where it ties in with a lot of rumors.
I don't want to speculate on things.
No, and Tyler, I mean, this is what the show is about, asking tough questions. But I want to be responsible here, because at this point we're actually talking about people's lives. And their careers and the such. But at the end of the day, there ended up being a new director of FRC, Frank Merrick, who is awesome. And I think the program's developed so well under his guidance. And when this is the story I always tell. When I was, a teenager in FRC, in First, because it wasn't FRC, it was just First. First was always the program that got things right. If something was messed up, they would fix it. And then for years, First was the program that got things wrong. And it became a joke. You can go through Chief Delphi where it's like, we know what will First mess up this time, And then after Frank took over, it became the program where they get stuff right. They make mistakes. We all do. But when they make mistakes now, man, do they fix them pretty quickly?
Yeah, and they own up to it and they're professional, right?
Like you think about how 148 and 987 got hosed at the Dallas Regional in 2015, and then they awarded spots. They admitted the mistakes were made, and I think that's an incredible evolution and incredible return to form. So
I definitely think that's something that, and when we talk about like Frank's the man, it was really this movement within FRC, and has kind of bled out to headquarters a little bit, that sometimes, in that era of First not doing things correctly, they forgot who their customers were, who pays to do this program. And yes, there are sponsors and VIPs to cater to, and there's absolutely an audience there, but as a program, not as headquarters, but as a program, FRC, FLL, FTC, whatever you want to call it, your customer is your team. And I think FRC has made this really nice evolution where, hey, customers, we made a mistake. We're going to fix it. Here's how. And it's this really nice maturity to what could very easily be like, oh, the program runs itself, they just register it, it's done, and we don't have to answer any questions. Where when FRC does something not quite right, they admit it and they apologize. And I think it's really good for teams. I know Chris brought up in chat a little earlier, is if things had gone differently that year and in that, you know, fixing of things, there would be a lot more mentor turnover, because people, like Karthik, you were saying, just wanted to give up. I know, like, I wasn't even on a team that was on Einstein, and the way things were handled, I was like, I don't even want to do this anymore. I'm done. I don't want to be a part of this. And it was so hard to feel the frustration from teams and not see anything get done in that couple of months span and not want to just give up. And then all of a sudden they shifted into this, we're going to make this right for our teams. We're going to work hard on pleasing our customer. And a little bit of faith was restored. And I think it meant a lot to people. Even just the beginning of moves to investigate was the right direction. And I think that's a big shift that happened out of this. And it's important to remember that.
There was some positivity. There was some good stuff drawn out of Einstein. And
it was long term, right? I mean, it took a couple of years to fully develop, and you know, Frank wasn't made the director immediately after 2012. It took a little bit of time for that to happen, but I agree. The culture of FIRST has started to change, and I think what I would call it is controlled transparency. So FIRST is, and Frank is the one really leading this, that you are seeing when something happens, they're starting to own up to it, and they're starting to at least give an explanation that satisfies the crowd, right? On how things are, on most things, you know, not everything, because they can't for everything like that. But yeah, we're starting to see, I agree with Libby, and I'm sure Karthik, you agree with that we're starting to feel more like the customer and not just, you know, something that's a guarantee for them.
Indeed.
All right, I think that's a great way to wrap up the show. And fantastic thing, we will have a post show for those who are sticking on for just a little bit with a couple questions. So sorry we didn't get to those, but thank you to everybody who tuned in today. We had a fantastic audience, fantastic panel. Thank you so much. And Fun Nation, don't forget, you can follow Candidly Speaking and other fun shows under First Updates Now. We do this for you, and you know, somebody made a joke in the chat about donations, and we don't take donations, at least yet. So right now, the best way for you to help us out is literally just tell a friend. Please just go on social media, subscribe to us on YouTube and Twitch, follow us on there, and just let people know about this, that this exists, because you know that this exists, but there are so many thousands more in FIRST that doesn't know this exists. And if you enjoy it, that's all we ask, that you just tell somebody about it, get them to come and watch with you. That means the world to us. So a big thank you to our producer, Nick Olson, working on behind the scenes and doing a great job presenting the show. If you'd like to leave us feedback, feel free to email feedback@firstupdatesnow.com. We'll be back with Candidly Speaking in January. And good luck to teams as we go into the build season. But you can tune in next week for a recap featuring the FRC Top 25 preview of 2017, where we're going to have the FRC Top 25 popularity contest, because we know that's what many of you think about it. And you can check out our website and social media for other fun shows. So on behalf of myself, Karthik, Libby, Nick, I'd like to thank you for tuning in and doing a fantastic job as an audience, and fantastic job hopefully we did for you. We'll see you next time on First Updates Now. Talk to you then. This has been a First Updates Now production. Visit us at firstupdatesnow.com or find us under First Updates Now on Facebook or Twitter.